I met Agnes in the 9th grade, started dating her, and we were pretty much an established couple from the 10th grade on. We had no problems all the way through high school, and cliché of all clichés, we exchanged our cleanest the night of the senior prom. After uncovering the realm of closeness, we embraced every opportunity. Marriage discussions had been ongoing since the 11th grade, and we had made the decision to wait until college completion before officially getting married. College brought about a transformation in Aggie. In high school, our peers acknowledged our relationship, ensuring that Aggie was left undisturbed by the guys. However, this dynamic changed when we entered college. Although some familiar faces from high school were present, the majority of students came from different places. In this new environment, the guys no longer saw Aggie as exclusively mine. Instead, they perceived her as a desirable female, subject to constant attention. I was aware of the situation, but there wasn't much I could do. With different majors and classes, our interactions were limited to the evenings after classes and after I finished work. The attention had an impact on Aggie, making her more flirty. I observed her walking, smiling, and talking with other guys several times, but being on the other side of the quad, she didn't notice me. Twice, while taking a shortcut through the student union, I spotted Aggie in the cafeteria with a guy and once with two of them. It only dawned on me much later that I never saw her with other girls. It was always with guys. Nevertheless, it didn't worry me. After all, we were a couple in love, planning to get married, so there was nothing for me to fret about. She was an attractive girl, naturally drawing attention from guys. But she was mine, proving it every night when we were together, for years. Later, after graduating, finding jobs in our respective fields, getting married, and starting a life of wedded bliss, I enjoyed almost 6 years of contentment before a sudden revelation shook me awake. While at my desk, Molly from the mailroom placed some files in my basket. As I examined the top one, I wondered why it had been routed to me, given that it concerned an account handled by Wally Bergman, an old classmate from high school and college. Midway through, I discovered a major error, realizing the projections were off by almost $3 million. As I reached for my calculator, Wally rushed into my office, urgently seeking the file for a presentation to Apex. I showed him the error, and he appeared visibly concerned about the mistake. He expressed the urgency of revising it swiftly to avoid any potential consequences. Subsequently, he took the file and left hastily to make the necessary adjustments. It was Thursday, and Aggie always worked late to finalize payroll for the Friday payday. Following my routine, I visited Bud's bar after work for his half-pound ground round and a couple of beers before heading home. Completing my burger and starting my second beer, Wally entered, spotted me, and joined me in my booth. He ordered a beer from Sue and asked her to bring me the bill, mentioning it was a gesture of gratitude for helping him preserve his job earlier that day. I accepted without argument, considering it wasn't a substantial amount. We talked about work, covering various subjects such as whether we had seen certain individuals or heard about recent events. Then, Wally brought up a delicate matter. He expressed his view that I was a nice person and questioned why I tolerated Aggie's behavior. I was confused and told him I didn't understand what he meant. He persisted, asking why I allowed Aggie to behave the way she did. My puzzled response prompted him to realize that I was unaware of something significant. As he attempted to leave, I stopped him and insisted that he stay. I urged him not to leave after dropping such a bombshell. I asked him to sit back down and explain further. Wally complied, expressing his uncertainty and shock that I hadn't been aware of the situation for the past 10 years. When I asked him what he meant, he revealed that Aggie had a questionable reputation. I was too stunned to respond. Wally apologized, regretting that he had brought it up. However, I insisted that he continue and provide more details. He admitted to knowing about Aggie's behavior since high school and confessed his involvement with her. Shocked by this revelation, I insisted that he tell me everything from the beginning without leaving out any details. The unfolding story shocked me, not just the content, but the realization that it had been happening for over 10 years without my knowledge. 2 weeks after senior prom, Wally walked into his cousin George's house, finding George and Aggie together. They both saw him, and since neither objected, he undressed and waited his turn. They took turns until Aggie stopped, and said she had to clean up before meeting me after my part-time job at Jessup's Market. Wally and George continued their encounters whenever I was at work. After George got serious with Melody Martin, Aggie was involved with Wally for a while. Then, finding her with Mike Bella and Justin Walsh, Wally joined in. The three of them continued until she had to stop for our meeting. Wally shared her with several others, and she had participated in group encounters with more than a half-dozen guys. I recognized that we were friends, but we weren't exactly best friends, you know? Remember the age of 18, when hormones were raging? You and Aggie were somewhat steady, but I didn't believe your relationship was that serious. I mean, if it were, would she be involved with anyone who showed interest? College didn't change that pattern. In the first semester as a freshman, Aggie had classes Monday through Thursday and Tuesday through Friday, with no classes on Wednesday. Her last class on weekdays ended at 2 or 1. I can't recall your schedule, but when you finished class, you went to work. When Aggie finished class, she headed to a bedroom somewhere. Wednesday turned into an all-day event throughout our school years. While class schedules varied, the constant was Aggie engaging after class until you finished work. I might be making it sound like an everyday occurrence, but it wasn't. 2 or 3 times a week, although most of us were surprised when you and Aggie got married, assuming you must have known what she had been doing. Yet you married her anyway. Some thought maybe you were into the idea of your women being with other men. Tyler speculated that perhaps you and Aggie were debauchees, but no one remembered seeing you with another girl. However, Aggie was frequently seen with other guys. I had no clue, Wally, not even a hint. Damn, Rob, I hate to be the one to inform you, but if you never knew, it stands to reason you probably don't know about her Thursday night date with Bob and Bill Howard. On the Tuesdays you bowl, she sees Mark Willard. I'm not sure who else she sees or when, but it's a sure bet that whenever you're off doing something, so is Aggie. It may not matter much, but I stopped being involved with her when you got married. A single woman is one thing, but messing around with a married woman is a whole different situation. I'm not sure what to say, Wally, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm definitely going to take some action. I finished my beer, stood up to leave, and turned to Wally. Thanks, Wally. Thanks for the burger, the beer, and for helping me gain clarity as I drove home. As I pondered Wally's revelations, I questioned whether to believe him. On one hand, I thought, no way. Aggie loves me, and she wouldn't betray me. On the other hand, why would Wally lie to me? I had to finally admit to myself that he wouldn't. He knew I'd verify what he told me, and if he had lied, how could we continue working together? The answer was, we couldn't, and Wally knew it. Working with him, aware of him and Aggie, would be challenging, but we'd eventually overcome it. I remembered the teenage years with hormones running high. If some other guy's girl offered back then, and I didn't have Aggie, I might have taken it. The real question now was, what the hell do I do, Rob? I didn't know that Aggie and I were finished. I might have managed a one-night drunken mistake, or maybe even a short-term affair, if Aggie could convince me it wouldn't happen again. But outright betrayal for 10 years? No way. I was lying in bed, pretending to be asleep as Aggie returned from handling the payroll. I ignored her touch when she reached out, as she wanted to give me leftovers, but I wasn't interested. Admittedly, I'd been receiving them for years without damage, but I didn't know that then. I do now. Her hand on my body made my skin crawl, and for the first time, I didn't get aroused when Aggie touched me. I was already up before Aggie the next morning, with coffee brewing and the morning paper in hand. Aggie asked what happened the previous night since she came home eager, and I was already in bed. Wally remarked that my behavior was unusual. I explained that I felt unwell because something I ate disagreed with me, so I decided to go to bed early. Aggie expressed hope for my recovery and mentioned I'd have to double duty tonight to make up for the missed night. Upon arriving at work, I immediately dialed Felix Mather, an old high school friend now practicing corporate law, though I wasn't quite sure what that entailed. I asked him for recommendations for an assertive divorce lawyer. He replied negatively, indicating that my request meant my hopeful assumption was incorrect. Discovering that I was looking for a divorce lawyer suggested that I had learned the truth about Aggie. He then questioned if I believed we had an open marriage, assuming that was the only way Aggie could engage in such behavior and still remain with me. Surprisingly, Felix, I had no idea about her actions until yesterday. After a brief pause, Felix suggested that I contact Tom's suite and mention his referral. Accordingly, I followed Felix's advice and called suite, informing him about Felix's recommendation. He informed me he could meet later that day if I could be there by 1. I assured him I could, and indeed I did. Suite informed me that I had various choices, ranging from a friendly separation to a scorched earth policy reminiscent of Attila the Hun. In our state, which was not a no-fault state, infidelity constituted valid grounds for divorce. However, obtaining a divorce based on infidelity required concrete and undeniable evidence. Mere hearsay wouldn't suffice. I inquired about how to gather the necessary evidence, to which Sweet responded by taking a card from his desk and passing it to me. The card belonged to Gaston Marshall, a private investigator whose office was conveniently located across the street. Sweet offered to contact Marshall to check if he could accommodate me promptly. I requested him to proceed, expressing my desire to conclude the process as quickly as possible. I also instructed him to start the divorce paperwork, promising to provide the evidence once I obtained it. Sweet made the call, and within 10 minutes, Gaston Marshall outlined our course of action. Unfortunately, one of the requirements was for me to act completely natural around Aggie, avoiding any suspicion that I was aware of the impending divorce. As unpleasant as it may be, Marshall advised, maintain your routine without changes. If you usually engage in lovemaking activities 3 or 4 times a week, continue to do so. Whether you typically initiate or not, keep it up. Just remember, it's no longer about making love. It's about fulfilling a physical need. Don't do anything that might disrupt her routine. It's crucial for our plan that she remains unaware of any changes in your relationship. I returned to my office, summoned my courage, and called Aggie. At work, it was our routine to dine out every Friday night and have breakfast every Sunday morning. So when I reached her on the phone, I suggested Tricochis for dinner, and she agreed. While I enjoyed my veal, Marcella and Aggie worked on her rigatoni, sipping white wine. Marshall Investigations employees were discreetly installing wireless cameras and listening devices in our house. Sipping my Merlot, I recalled Marshall's advice. It's natural to want to spot hidden cameras, but resist the urge. If she catches you, our efforts could be wasted. Also, force yourself to act natural in the bedroom, challenging unless you're a born exhibitionist. The system is sound and motion activated. You'll be on camera, knowing some employees may see you. Don't let it inhibit you. Although there's a switch to turn off the system at home, most forget to turn it back on when leaving. My advice, leave the system alone and pretend you're a confident star at work. After dinner, while making a private video, I suggested drinks and maybe some dancing to Aggie. She declined, insisting we head home for me to make up for letting her down the previous night. On the way home, she slid over, unzipped my pants, and cautioned, "Drive carefully, sweetie. Don't hit anything that might make me bite off your meat." In my mind, what she was doing wasn't unique for me, but something she had done with 100 other men over the last 10 years. Despite my disgust with Aggie, human nature took over a couple of minutes into the act, and my body responded, wanting her to continue and bring me to completion. Soon after, I pulled into our driveway, and Aggie urged me to hurry up to the bedroom. I couldn't adhere to Marshall's advice. There was no way I could act natural, knowing I might be performing for an audience. Trying to appear natural while being lovemaking with Aggie was going to be a challenge. So, I went to where I was told the switch would be and turned the system off. Leaving my cell phone on the car seat, I knew it would remind me to reactivate the system when I saw it upon leaving the house. I don't know if it registered with Aggie, but that night, it wasn't making love. It was just going through the motions. Unfortunately, once wasn't enough, and I had to perform 2 more times before Aggie let me sleep. The next morning, dressed for my run, Aggie reminded me she wouldn't be home when I returned, attributing it to a lengthy hair appointment from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Aggie mentioned gossiping with other regulars and usually going to lunch with them. It could even be the truth. But after what I'd recently found out, I thought she probably met one of her extramarital partners either before or after getting her hair done. On my way out, I switched the system back on. I doubted anything would happen during my run, but I needed to form the habit of ensuring the system was active when I wasn't home. The switch only deactivated the cameras. The listening devices and phone tap were always on. After my usual 5 miles, returning home, I went down into the basement and opened the cabinet above my workbench. It's where I told Marshall to place the recorders. 2 receivers were inside, one for listening devices and the phone tap, the other a DVD recorder receiving input from the wireless cameras. Confirming my suspicions, I heard a recorded conversation. "Hello? Good morning, lover. Are we still on for today?" "You bet. The wife took the kids to the zoo, so we have until 6 tonight. You know I can't stay that long. I need to be home by 2. Any later and it might get Rob to wondering. He has already questioned the fact that I don't get home until 2. Then skip the hair job and get over here so we can make it happen." "Yeah, sure. Then what do I tell Rob when he asks why I've been gone so long and my hair hasn't been done?" "I want more time with you two, baby, but we have to settle for what we can get." I recognized the man's voice. It was my cousin Lou. I was furious when I went back upstairs, wondering how many other relatives she had been involved with. I managed to control my anger by the time Aggie returned from her hair appointment. An hour later, I faked a fall down the basement stairs, telling Aggie I'd hurt my back. Must have pulled a muscle or something. This conveniently excused me from being lovemaking with her for the next couple of days at least. On Monday, I phoned Aggie at work and informed her that I would be leaving town on Tuesday, returning by Friday to take her out to dinner. Although there was no actual trip planned, I didn't view it as 3 wasted days. On average, I traveled once a month, and Aggie was consistently home during my nightly check and phone call. Since my calls occurred at irregular times, ranging from 7 to 10, I doubted she waited for them before going out. If she were cheating, as I'd been led to believe, she might be doing it on our bed while I spoke to her. That was my hope. If she was, and the cameras captured it, I'd have the irrefutable proof my attorney needed for the divorce action. That evening, Aggie desired closeness, stating, "I need something to hold me for the 3 nights you will be gone." "Yeah, right." Fortunately, my back was still hurting, so I had to decline. On Tuesday morning, Aggie bid me farewell with a kiss and suitcase in hand. I left for my supposed business trip, working almost a full day before leaving at 3. I drove to our neighborhood, parked a block from the house, and using my laptop, entered a code Marshall had given me to activate the software he loaded onto my computer. A few keystrokes, and I was listening to the phone line recorder. "Hello? Hey, handsome honk, it's me. What's up? Hubby just left on a 3-day trip. You ready to spend 3 fun-filled nights with me? Does a duck walk barefoot on the beach? I'll take that as a yes. I leave it to you to call Tony. I've got to get out of here and get to work. I'll be home by 6. See you then." After shutting down the computer, I called Tom Sweet and instructed him to have the papers ready for service by Thursday, detailing how I wanted it done. He informed me that my preferred method would cost more than the standard service fee, to which I replied that I didn't care. Leaving the neighborhood, I drove to the other side of town and checked into a motel with a restaurant and a bar next door, settling in for a 3-day stay. I enjoyed the bar, my kind of place, bringing a big smile to my face each time I visited. Apologies to Toby Keith. It was a country western bar with a jukebox loaded with good tunes for dancing. Every night, I saw 3 or 4 unattached ladies who couldn't bear to see a man sitting alone while there was music to dance to. During my first visit, while sitting at the bar nursing a long neck, a great-looking redhead approached and said, "Come on, sugar, they're playing our song." She took my hand, pulled me off the bar stool, and led me onto the dance floor. As we waltzed, she clarified, "Don't get the wrong idea, sugar. I'm not tallying. I just love the dance. And you were there." Her name was Rhonda, and after the dance, she invited me to join her and her 2 friends, Laura and Shelby, at their table. I spent until 10:30 taking turns dancing with them, then informed them I had to call it a night. "Maybe we will see you again," Rhonda said. "We are in here 2 or 3 nights a week. I'm just next door in the motel, so it is likely that I will be in here the next 2 nights. I went to bed feeling positive for the first time since my conversation with Wally. The following afternoon at 3, I parked a block away from the house and reviewed the footage captured by the wireless cameras the previous night. The 2 men who joined Aggie in the bedroom were notably younger, at least 6 years her junior, and I wondered if Aggie was seeking youthful exuberance. The content was unremarkable, involving straightforward lovemaking activities. While the visual of Aggie with two men didn't particularly interest me, I was intrigued by the audio. I was surprised by what I heard, or rather, what I didn't hear. I expected Aggie to ridicule my lovemaking skills, but she never did. Wednesday was uneventful, with my presence only acknowledged when one of the men expressed a wish for more frequent meetings. Aggie clarified that I had priority for her time. However, I overheard Aggie telling them to leave the house by 6 in the morning on both Wednesday and Thursday. She emphasized the importance of avoiding being seen by the neighbors, as none of them were early risers. They left precisely at 6, and I assumed the same would occur on Friday. I called my attorney and had him change the serving of the papers until Friday at 5:45. Friday morning, I parked just down the street from the house at 5:55. When the front door opened, the two men came out. They turned to say goodbye to Aggie, who was standing just inside the door. And that is when they saw the man standing just off to the side. He stepped in front of the open door, served Aggie, and then turned and walked away, leaving Aggie and her two companions looking at his back. I pulled up in front of the house and honked the horn to make sure that I had Aggie's attention, and then I waved bye-bye and drove off. The papers served on Aggie were a letter from me to her. Basically, it said that I never wanted to speak to her again unless in the presence of our attorneys. I didn't want to know why. I didn't want to hear that she loved only me, and it was just meaningless closeness with the others. I didn't want to hear that it wasn't what I thought it was. And I didn't want to hear that we could get by it because of our love for each other. I did not want to hear any of the excuses cheaters come up with when caught. Of course, Aggie paid no attention to the letter, and 15 minutes after I had pulled away from the house, my cell rang, and it was Aggie. I let it go to voicemail, along with the next 7 calls from her. When I got to work, I told my secretary that I had left Aggie and not to put through any calls from her. I had another thought as I was opening my office door, and I turned back to her. Another thing, Martha, if she shows up here, please tell her that I'm not here. Tell her I've gone to meet with a customer. Martha stuck her head in the door. 5 minutes later, I talked to Iris on the front desk. If your wife shows up, she will call me and stall her to give you time to get out the side door. You can go to the cafe and have coffee until she leaves. I thanked her, and as she went back to her desk, I thought, and not for the first time, that a good secretary is a priceless thing to have. Aggie called me 17 times that day, and I ignored all the calls. At lunchtime, I phoned my dad and brother, updating them on the situation. I instructed Dad to inform Mom and asked her not to persuade me to reconcile with Aggie. He mentioned it would be challenging, since Mom viewed Aggie as the daughter she never had. By the day's end, I still had some pending work. Since there was no rush to go home, I opted to stay and finish it by 5. Martha informed me before leaving. By the way, your wife called 5 times before noon, and each time I told her I had instructions not to put her through to you. I think she finally got the message since she hasn't called since I finished around 7. Upon reaching the lobby, Iris was gone. Hank, our night watchman, saw me and commented, "Hot time on the town tonight with the missus. Why would you think that she is out there waiting on you?" I clarified, "We are getting a divorce, Hank, and she wants to talk, and I don't." I instructed him not to open the door if she knocked, and if she used the intercom, to say he was alone in the building. I added that my car was in the lot due to a breakdown, and a tow truck would arrive in the morning. Hank assured me he could handle it, expressing sympathy for the situation, and sharing he had been through 2 divorces. Exiting through the back door, I circled the block, crossed the street, and walked down the alley to Dave's Diner, entering and taking a seat. I positioned myself to observe Aggie waiting by my car, ordered the special, and kept an eye on her while eating. Halfway through dessert, she approached the building and pressed the call button on the intercom. Apparently, Hank conveyed my message as she returned to her car and left. After finishing dessert and having one more cup of coffee, I departed. I briefly stopped in the bar for a couple of beers. Despite a few ladies there alone, hoping for a dance partner, I had my 2 beers and left. Saturday morning proved busy as I attended to tasks I should have completed before serving Aggie. I just hoped I wasn't too late, and she hadn't taken action on what I should have done. I went to the bank and emptied all the accounts, retrieved my personal papers and certificates of deposit from the safe deposit box, leaving Aggie's belongings untouched. I removed my wedding ring, placing it in the box for her discovery. Afterward, I had breakfast at the Waffle House, using my cell phone to handle the credit cards. I canceled both joint cards, leaving me with a Visa and an American Express solely in my name. Aggie also had 2 cards in her name only. Thus, I ensured she couldn't run up joint cards with cash advances. After breakfast, I returned to the motel, parked my car, and called a cab to take me to the nearest Avis rental place. Renting the cheapest car available, I returned to the motel. I spent the afternoon lounging by the motel pool and reading a book. Just before dinner, I switched on my cell phone, finding 9 messages from Aggie. I cleared them and then turned the phone back off. For dinner, I had a light meal and then headed to the bar, which had a live band on Friday and Saturday, attracting a large crowd. Finding a seat at the bar, I ordered a beer. As I downed about half of it, I felt a tug on my shirt. Turning, I saw Rhonda. "Hey, cowboy, why are you sitting here when there is a seat at our table for you? To be honest, if I had seen you, I wouldn't have intruded on you. It would have seemed like I was taking things for granted." "Nonsense, come on." I got up and followed her to her table, where Laura and Shelby were also present. I sat down, greeted the girls, and then commented, "There seems to be something wrong with this picture. 3 beautiful women sitting alone and you aren't swamped with guys. We get a lot of attention, but it is usually from idiots. They see us here, notice the wedding rings, and assume we're here to cheat. We're just here to dance, and only a couple of guys understand that and accept it. The rest think they are God's gift to women, and we have to fend them off after the other night. We know that you are one of the good guys, and you have an open invitation to join us whenever you come in, and we are here. It isn't any of my business, and I know that, so feel free to tell me that. But I have to ask, why are 3 gorgeous married women spending time in a place like this without your husbands?" "It is a legitimate question," Rhonda said. "Laura's husband is in the Army Reserve, and his unit was sent to Afghanistan. She was going nuts cooped up in her house alone, so we decided to get her out. Shelby's husband works afternoons, and my hubby is a long-haul trucker who is often away, so the 3 of us banded together to keep each other company. We love to dance, and here we are. What's your story? I noticed you had a ring on last time we saw you, and now it is gone." "I handed my wife divorce papers yesterday morning and left the ring where she'd find it. Does that mean you're free to pursue?" "Not at all. The grounds were infidelity, and I won't give her anything she could use against me in a countersuit," Laura remarked. "Great," she added. "We have a reliable dancing partner." The rest of the evening until closing, I danced with the 3 of them, occasionally sharing them with other guys. They agreed to meet on Sunday. I spent a quiet day by the pool with a book, and Monday I drove the rental car to work. I hoped Aggie wouldn't see my car, assuming I was out of town again and would stay away. The week passed with 6 to 10 calls daily from Aggie, which I never answered more than once. She called from unfamiliar numbers, but upon hearing her voice, I hung up. Each night after dinner, I stopped by the bar for a beer or 2. Rhonda, Laura, and Shelby were there on Wednesday and Friday, so I joined them, dancing until 10 on Wednesday and until closing on Friday. I figured by Saturday, Aggie would realize I wasn't going to talk to her, so I turned in my rental and drove my car to work on Monday. A mistake. Monday, she was parked next to my car when I left the building. Spotting me, she got out and stood by my car's driver's side door. She mentioned that we needed to talk, but I didn't respond. As I approached the car, she moved to block the door, insisting that I let her explain. I pushed her aside, causing her to stumble but regain her balance quickly. I rolled down the window and informed her that she needed to read the letter accompanying the divorce papers. I asserted that I wouldn't engage in any conversation without my attorney present, and that any discussion would strictly concern the divorce. Aggie expressed her unwillingness to divorce and her lack of desire for me. I reiterated that our relationship was over and that she needed to accept it because I wouldn't change my mind. After rolling up the window, I drove away, leaving her behind. Aggie's refusal to accept my decision became apparent when I left work on Tuesday. 2 men approached my car and grabbed my arms. I recognized them as the individuals who had been with Aggie in our bedroom. One of them warned me not to resist, stating that Aggie wanted to talk, and since I was being difficult, They would take me to her by any means necessary. Though only a few years older, they must have thought me soft due to my suit and briefcase. I figured I could handle them. They wouldn't expect an old guy to resist, so I could catch them off guard. Either way, the commotion would draw attention, and their kidnapping plan would fail. But then I pondered, do I truly desire this? If Aggie was willing to go to such lengths just to reach Octomy, what might she attempt next? If I sent these two back to her battered and bruised? They nudged me into my car, and I sat between them, a briefcase on my lap, as they drove to the house. They escorted me inside, and Aggie instructed them to seat me in a chair and ensure I remained there. She turned to me and announced that we wouldn't be getting a divorce. As I attempted to rise from the chair, the two men pushed me back down and restrained me. One of them warned me to stay still. Aggie declared that we would remain married, but that there would be changes in our lifestyle due to her medical issue, which I had discovered. She expressed regret that I had found out about it, but insisted that I had to accept it, now that I knew. She then confessed her love for me, asserting that she wouldn't let me go. She revealed that her medical issue was nymphomania, which she had suffered from since high school. Aggie attributed the onset of her condition to when I took her pureness. I dismissed her statement, suggesting that there were medications available to address her condition. She acknowledged that such medications existed, but explained that she had tried them all. She found them ineffective as they made her feel sluggish and dull, likening the experience to being a zombie. Despite this, she admitted that she enjoyed being a nymphomaniac and emphasized her love for closeness, asserting that she hardly ever left me alone. She argued that her actions didn't damage me and that she spoiled me. Aggie reasoned that since I couldn't maintain arousal constantly, she needed to seek it elsewhere, and assured me that she always returned to me because she loved me. She outlined her terms, explaining that she had drafted a post-nuptial agreement, allowing her to have as many lovers as necessary for her mental well-being. She proposed that I agree to leave the marriage with nothing if I later found the conditions unacceptable. In return, she asked what she would receive besides having a promiscuous wife. I responded by assuring her that she would continue to have the same loving wife she had for the past 6 years. I reminded her that she had considered those years perfect despite my actions, which were now causing an issue. I suggested that the only change was that my ego was now involved, as someone else was involved in something I had previously considered mine alone. I urged her to accept that our life would continue as it had for the last 6 years. Aggie emphasized that my inability to meet her physical needs didn't mean I wasn't man enough for her. She praised me as a fantastic lover who always left her completely satisfied. However, she acknowledged that I couldn't satisfy her as often as she needed. I addressed her by her full name, aware of her aversion to it. Reluctantly agreeing to sign the agreement with a few amendments, I voiced my concerns about our lack of closeness and expressed my need for her presence in our bed. Despite my plea and reassurance of my love for her, she seemed unwavering in her stance. With a heavy heart, I accepted her offer to make the necessary changes, hoping it might salvage some of our crumbling relationship. As I attempted to rise from my chair, the two men accompanying her obstructed my path, leaving me feeling trapped and powerless. When I mentioned needing to use the bathroom, one of them callously suggested I relieve myself where I sat, citing Aggie's directive to keep me seated until further notice. Aggie returned after 5 minutes, read the document aloud, and I asked where to sign. She offered a pen, but I mentioned her associates preventing me from standing and instructed them to stand. Rising, I approached her, placed my briefcase on the table, and took the pen. However, I decided to review it myself to ensure its contents matched her description. After reading it, I chuckled, tore it up, and tossed it back at her. I grabbed my briefcase and headed for the door. Aggie yelled to stop me, and her 2 associates pursued. As they neared, I swiftly turned toward them with my briefcase, targeting the first guy's head. It was a solid hit, sending him down. The second guy was taken off guard, and I punched him in the mouth, causing him to stagger backward. Then, I delivered a forceful kick to his groin, and he collapsed. Understanding the need to keep them subdued in a 2-against-1 scenario, I continued to strike both of them. I alternated between kicking them in sensitive areas and striking their ribs and head until Aggie screamed for me to stop or she'd shoot. Glancing at her, I noticed she was aiming a weapon at me. Defiantly, I challenged her to shoot. I retrieved my cell phone, dialed emergency, provided my name and address, and informed the operator of my wife's armed threat. The operator advised me to remain calm and not provoke her, ensuring help was on the way. After ending the call, I sarcastically thanked Agnes, suggesting her incarceration would expedite our divorce. She criticized my action as foolish. Agnes warned me that when the police arrived, I would be the one facing arrest. She accused me of entering and attacking her friends out of jealousy, stating that it would be my word against theirs and that they were fully clothed. I mocked her response, questioning her love for me. She assured me not to worry. I countered by stating that I would bail out and that Barry and Tony wouldn't press charges. I reminded Agnes that Hank and Joyce witnessed the two individuals picking me up from work and escorting me inside. I accused her of having me brought there against my will and hindering me when I tried to leave, despite her companion's failure. Then she pulled a weapon on me. I explained that although I might spend a night in jail, when my witnesses testified, she would be the one behind bars, and I wouldn't be posting her bail. I advised her that considering the situation, including kidnapping, false imprisonment, weapon threats, and likely other charges, her best course of action would be to stay silent. Aggie ignored my advice and, along with her associates, fabricated their stories. Consequently, I was taken into custody. The next morning, I called Tom Sweet, briefed him on the situation, and instructed him to collaborate with Gaston Marshall, obtain the evidence, and take appropriate action. Aggie realized she couldn't bail me out until I appeared before a judge, which wouldn't occur until Monday. Tom had a friend who worked as an assistant district attorney. He showed him the tapes of what happened at the house, which depicted Barry and Tony restraining me while Aggie aimed a weapon at me. The ADA overheard Aggie admitting she planned to lie and have her two accomplices do the same. When Aggie showed up at the courthouse for my bail hearing on Monday morning, she got arrested. Warrants were issued for Barry and Tony, and they were behind bars by nightfall. I refused to post bail for Aggie, and her parents couldn't come up with the money either. Aggie obtained a lawyer who contacted me and suggested a bail bondsman wanted me to use the house as collateral for her bond. I dismissed the suggestion and hung up. I checked out of the motel and moved back home, then had all the locks changed since Aggie had threatened me with a weapon. Tom managed to get a restraining order against Aggie in case she somehow got out of jail. She couldn't come within 1,000 feet of me without facing arrest and being sent back to jail. As tempting as it might have been to reconcile with Aggie, it wasn't worth risking serious jail time. Both Barry and Tony flipped on Aggie and took plea deals. Aggie claimed she never intended to shoot me. She was just trying to stop me from hurting Barry or Tony so badly that I'd end up in jail. The jury watched the tape, and based on Aggie's expressions of love for me, believed she was probably telling the truth about trying to prevent me from damaging Barry or Tony. They acquitted her of the felony menacing charge, but found her guilty of unlawful restraint and filing a false police report, along with a few minor charges. The judge sentenced her to 9 months in county jail and 1,000 hours of community service upon release. While she was in jail, the divorce proceedings wrapped up smoothly. Aside from losing Aggie, I only forfeited 20% of the equity in the house. I transferred the money to her bank account and headed to the bar next to the motel where I'd been staying. Luck was on my side. Rhonda and Shelby were there, so I invited them to celebrate my newfound freedom with me. Laura wasn't around because her husband had returned from deployment, and they were busy catching up. "Why celebrate with us?" Rhonda asked. "Well, I'm taking a wild guess here. I noticed Laura's wedding ring and Shelby's too, but you, Rhonda, aren't wearing a ring, and I don't see any signs you ever wore one, so I'm guessing there's no long-haul trucker in your life. Plus, I've always had a thing for gorgeous redheads." Shelby chuckled and teased, "Girl, you're busted," as I pulled Rhonda onto the dance floor.